This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon-to-be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. And each week we have a secret word to listen for. If you catch it, you earn the right to take an extra break at the time of your choosing from whatever is stressing you out. From NotAPipePublishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing.
Today's secret phrase is ass to grass.
Excellent.
If I take my time.
Salutations, hail and well-met readers. Very excited to have you here today and excited to bring you our guest, Charles Austin Muir. Charles Austin Muir is a writer, retired cancer caregiver, and widower. He's the author of 3 collections, the Splatterpunk Award-nominated This Is a Horror Book, Bodybuilding Spider Rangers, and Slippery When Metastasized. And his short fiction has appeared in anthologies such as Cinema Viscera, The Phone, Shredded, a sports and fitness body horror anthology, and The New Flesh, a literary tribute to David Cronenberg. He's also a personal trainer who teaches people how to bend properly and lives in Portland, Oregon with his pit lab, Ruby Sue, who might wander through the background.
Yeah.
I saw Ruby. I was like, hey, there's Ruby Sue. So how's it going today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good, good. So folks who are watching can see our costumes, but folks who are listening on the podcast don't know what we're wearing. So tell the podcast listeners about your costume.
Well, I'm a Gen Xer, grew up in the 70s, and so in tribute, I'm dressed as Steve Austin, the $6 Million Man.
Oh, awesome. Excellent.
I've found on Etsy, I'm rocking a safari suit with a red butterfly collar. I got some fake chest hair. I needed a lot of fake chest hair.
Yes.
And a proper toupee.
Yes, and you know, to stick with the theme, I went with the Bionic Woman from 1976. So
Nice.
I got these suede loose sweatpants, and I've got this loose blouse with like the rainbow stripes on the open here, and it's open, and I really should have shaved my chest hair because but no bra because it was 1976. This is remarkably comfortable. I'm like, I should be wearing what the Bionic Woman was wearing all the time. It is a very comfortable look.
I was really hoping you would dress as such.
Yes. Oh yeah. This is maybe this is what I'll wear all the time now.
We should go for a run after this.
Yeah. Yes. Am I brave enough to wear this loose blouse and sweats and run at Bionic Woman speeds? So I've been excited to have you on the show. You've had a lot going on. Tell everybody about what all has been going on in your life.
Well, as Ben mentioned, I'm a widower. That happened fairly recently. My wife, Kara, was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer in May of 2019. And so I became a caregiver. She was very independent and badass. And so I didn't do super care. I didn't even want to call myself a caregiver a lot of the time. But definitely last summer, things took a dark turn, and I went from, transportation and support and all the other things to basically learning the hands-on skills of a real deal hospice nurse in 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, folks who are doing the math, that's stage 4, 5 years ago. Kara was a real fighter, and so that's you went through everything over the course of the last 5 years. And so how has that all manifested for you now as, a widower who has had this experience? You've been doing a lot. I mean, we should tell everybody about the service too, because the celebration was amazing. So
thank you.
tell folks about how you put this whole thing together and what all entailed, because it is difficult to describe, but it was amazing.
Well, so Kara, she was an entertainer. She was a performer. She loved the stage. She wasn't a trained professional and wasn't really able to find an outlet for her, I guess, suppressed creative entertaining interests until she turned 40. And then that was the year, as she put it, she decided to say yes to things. As much of a Netflix show as that sounds like now, that was the year she went for it, and she discovered the weird world of competitive air guitar.
And tell everybody how. I mean, I learned this at the celebration. It's wild. Somebody just went, "You get up on stage." Like, how did that happen?
Well, there's a documentary called Air Guitar Nation, and it's a friend of mine, an ex-friend of mine. This is in my more bodybuilding, toxic alpha male meathead days. He told me, you got to watch this documentary, because he too had a creative side that he was suppressing because of all our, the male insecurity, body dysmorphia, and all that kind of thing. But he something really appealed to him, and so we sat down and appropriately got pretty drunk and we're watching it. But at the end, I was like, this is weirdly inspiring, and he's like, right. And then a little bit after that, these air guitarists they were on America's Got Talent shortly before that, and they were putting on this really informal, very small contest at a local bar just up the street from our house. And our friend entered, and it was a very different, kind of a vulnerable thing for him to do this, because he was like 280-pound, bodybuilder guy. And this is before fitness became mainstream. It was a subculture, and it was very, well, I just keep saying toxic.
Oh.
And so this was really stepping outside of his comfort zone. But he shows up, and meanwhile, the guys are trying to get people to sign up, and he's the only one who signed up. And so they were like, Kara, come on, what about you? They'd never met. And she was just like, yeah, I mean, if no one else goes up. And they're like, please, no one's signing up. Why don't you just sign up anyway? She's like, all right, sure. So she signs up. He competes. He actually does really good, but then he gets freaked out and he leaves. And I was trying to tell him, I've been to all your strongman contests and all this, and that what you just did there is the most badass thing I've ever seen you do.
Yeah.
But he felt weird and walked off, and we stopped being friends soon after that. Not because of air guitar, but then Kara went up when she was wearing a hat, and they put on Metal Health by a Quiet Riot, and she didn't know anything about air guitar, and she had all the classic, like, small tiny guitar things, but she could entertain.
Yeah.
And at one point her hat fell off, and instead of as an accident, she picked it up and did this kind of Michael Jackson thing with it and went on, and she won the and after that, all these drunk guys decided, well, if this chick can do that, I can enter, thinking they were going to win. And they all did the same hat trick. But she won. And the guys told her, well, you've won a ticket to the actual regional contest at Dante's. 4 days later, you show up, and if you win, you can go to the national championships. So she comes up with a whole costume, and her best friend hairstylist had this whole really elaborate glam rock look for her. She went, didn't get into the second round. It was her first time, didn't do so well, but she was hooked. Just going on stage and feeling like, everyone, most people kind of want to be a rock star, right? And she was like, and people are buying me drinks, and it's a weird thing. And so she entered the year after that. And then the year after that, she got really determined and went on a whole tour where she entered several contests and did end up going to the national championships. And that's where she met a lot of the people you saw at the show. It's a tight-knit community, and they're so welcoming. And because of that, we've got friends all over the country, all over the world, who will just put you up in their place. I mean, anything you need. That's because we're all making these wild agreements about that there's nothing is a thing, and we know this.
Yeah.
And there's just a built-in humor about it, and a real it's weird how loving and supporting this community is. And so that's how that came
just such
about.
Wonderful energy. I mean, those folks are, they're just like overflowing with positivity. Like, they've honed this by encouraging one another and being so, presentational and dramatic. And so, yeah, it was, so then and so the celebration was wild. I mean, imagine, everybody listening, you have to imagine a whole bunch of air guitarists in the same space. It was like it was above a bar, but it was almost church shaped. It was this, this large hall for this. and it was nuts. It was so much fun. Like, and it was very well put together, and it was just a wonderful experience.
Yeah, in the middle of an ice storm, which just made
Yeah,
it even more intense.
yeah. So yeah, that was, and I'm sure a ton of work for you putting all that, getting all that arranged.
Well, it was in that. So how it, I knew that she should have a service of some kind, and she wasn't attached to a church
Yeah.
or had a certain kind of religious beliefs. And honestly, we never talked about, like, neither of us have ever talked about like uh services and stuff like memorials and things like that. So I was like, well, this is all new territory for me. And so I started kind of outlining, well, let's start with a procession. I call it a lapsed Catholic, they call it. And so I was like, the easiest thing for me to do, I want to create a container for all the emotions for people to have. But at the same time, it has to reflect and embody Kara, which is going to involve some cueing the audience because Kara had very different beliefs about life and death and sickness and health and a very dark sense of humor.
Yeah.
And so I was like, but I'll follow the formula of a Catholic mass because it's something I'm familiar with. No one will know this. And at the same time, it'll give people a familiar sense of different through lines between readings and music and group rituals. And so I was sketching out this procession of the urn, and then I was like, oh no, this needs to have a flag with Kara's logo on it. It needs to have light LEDs on the urn itself. This needs to have bodyguards. It's morphed into this sort of uh, ancient Egypt meets Mad Max Furiosa
Yes.
uh, military weird procession full of sparkle, flashing lights. And you got to have the muscle, you got to have the royalty, you've got to have the flag bearer, and you've got to have the entourage, the adepts, the worshipers bearing the queen. And so from there, it just grew and grew. And I was like, Kara, I'm not even right because I've never done anything like this before, writing or envisioning anything like this. And so I was like, I'm channeling Kara here. And then along the way, a super close friend of ours who was the stage, he kind of stage manager, he was offering to help, but it was beyond either of our scope of knowledge of how to do something of this complexity. We put on air guitar shows. I didn't know. And then I ran it. I asked Jenny Comp,
Yeah, I know, Jenny.
hey, John Dover, he said, you might want to reach out to Jenny and see, she has theater experience. And turns out she has theater experience all the way up to Broadway level standard, which I discovered as soon as she shared with me a spreadsheet with like 6 different tabs of all these things I'd never heard of before. And so from there, it went from kind of DIY, let's hope for the best, to full on professional show.
Yeah, I mean, and it really was, and it was this wonderful mix of videos of Kara and people singing, and I can totally see how it was, formatted on top of kind of worship service, from my lapsed Protestant upbringing,
Yeah.
now we have a song, and now we have a reading, and now we have, but it worked so well. Like it was a wonderful.
Thank you.
And
Well, I wanted it to be surprising in the sense that, like, let's say if you're an improv person, all your improv people do improv at your funeral. If you're a comedian, they all do comedy. But I wanted something where it's not just air guitar. I
Right.
wanted to tell a story and show people that you can work out ritualize your grief in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just let's invent that way. It'll be different for everybody. It's not just let's just do this one thing that the deceased did. It's let's invent it. Let's create a world better than the one we're in to celebrate this person and the impact they've had.
Yeah,
Because
I
Kara
don't
was
want,
always, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I don't want listeners thinking like it was purely entertainment. Like it was deeply moving. It was, a powerful experience and also a ton of fun. Like it was this, where, it was really powerful to be there in that space with all these people who loved her, to hear her voice and her wisdom through the videos, and then to have it manifest in this incredibly fun way. So that was, yeah, it was a powerful evening. I got a lot. I mean, I was just like, what a wonderful tribute to her.
That's exactly what I was hoping, is that people can, whoever go, whether you knew her or not, that you go out in the world thinking it. One of the crew members was like, "Is it wrong that I'm jealous? This is amazing." A bunch
Yeah.
of people in the crew that didn't know what was happening until they saw it happen were like, "I'm never gonna get something
Oh
this
yeah. Oh no, yeah. My partner and I were both talking about like there will not be anything this fantastic for either of us. Like, but yeah, it was a really cool experience. And then, what has come about for you since then? Because I can imagine that was so much work and stress and effort. Was there a big letdown after that, or
Oh,
how have you
huge.
processed that
The
since?
the diff well, I kind of saw it. Well, one, all the setbacks made it even more intense. The chaos
Oh yeah.
of the ice storm and like other things, just things that were unrelated that all piled on top of me all at once in every direction. And then like the lighting company didn't deliver, just a bunch of things. Lots of ghosts in the theater. Good
Yeah.
things we had backups, because anything, there's just a lot of, you always hear things can go wrong, but like this was crazy intense things going wrong. Uh, and that was kind of like the whole process. I could see it happening was following the rhythm of what I went through last summer, where
Mm.
the level of care intensified so quickly, and there was so much chaos having to do with supply delays and shipping delays and nurse staffing
Hospital.
shortages
Oh
and random stuff, like all car accidents just in the middle, like just awful. And me, when you're trying to learn stuff like changing colostomy bags and catheters, and your learning curve, you're out in the field and you're on your own, and it's a mess if things go wrong.
yeah.
And so I had to learn real fast. And then at the same time, there was such an influx of loving people, including like her nurse, her wound care nurses, her home after they were not really able to be professionally involved anymore. Just so many people coming through. The side door was never locked, and then I knew it was going to build up, and to do all that care, I had to not be me,
Yeah.
because Kara wanted her care a certain way. She didn't want hospice nursing. She wanted me
Yeah.
and the close aunt and friend who became the night crew, and everyone else who would just come by to help with medication and all that sort of thing. And so we, like this funeral, we invented our own hospice
Yeah.
because that's what she wanted, because she wanted to experience her her transition her own way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but what that happened then is, of course, as with probably a lot of experiences of this, then the person passes, and then boom, everyone's around, and
Yeah.
then it's not that they're not thinking of you, but you're you're alone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what, and it hit pretty darn hard, and it hit pretty darn hard once all the people had flown in from town. They all went to catch their flights, and everyone who's practicing all the text threads, all the DMs, all of that, the emails, and this overriding sense of, it felt like like if it was a war of awesomeness of putting on this great show. There were so many theaters and so many different, like, sea, air, and land, and everyone like, you tell me what to do, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And
And then,
people,
like a war, everybody goes home and
yeah,
treats everyone like what? That happened that happened to you? Well, we got over it, and yeah, that is a hollow place afterwards. I'm really glad you got Ruby Sue. Like, that was when my house emptied out at one point in my life, having a dog made a huge
oh
difference.
yeah, I bet, yeah,
Having an empty house is it's a different feel.
yeah. And in my situations, I do want to stress that I've had so much love and support, and people that are, I realized the ripple of how much her impact, how much people miss her and have been affected by her in their lives. It's a lot more powerful than it may seem to me, just sitting alone in my house at 3 in the morning. Because I also, something else I did, and I hope this is of use to people listening, because you've lost people and you're going to lose more.
Yeah.
And so I hope that this can be not just someone overhearing two guys gabbing about funerals, but that I part of it, I wanted media coverage for this. That was DIY too, right? Is I wanted to get photos, so I got and all this is volunteer. This is how much she could get people together, and then a lot of talent. Two professional photographers, a professional videographer, and then I wanted some interviews with all these people coming to town, just asking like, why are you here? I mean, this is pretty hardcore, like, and you're going to be part of the show, but you're not going to be able to experience this memorial to her the way other people in the audience will. It's going to be very different. It will be special. But what the heck drew you here? What does she mean to you? What does her art mean to you? How has she inspired you? And it's like a handful of questions. I asked Rob, who was handling all these tasks, to just find someone to get some short interviews because all these people are in town. And then, of course, as the show built up and it became the making of it became an event in itself. So all these interviews would have an extra sense of eventfulness and all this, the emotion of people coming together for this and not for a fun national championship weekend. And I didn't expect the emotion. Like I thought maybe I'd get 20 minutes of, well, one, I thought I'd maybe get 5 people coming in for this. We got 40.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of an ice storm, I thought I'd maybe get like 20 minutes of interviews. I've got like somewhere between 2 and 3 hours.
Yeah.
Of just,
Well,
yeah.
tell listeners about, because part of the you know, the draw, I mean, some of the people knew Kara and knew you through the blog, and that will become a book. Like this is because you're right, this is not just about the service. This is a, you know, an ongoing gift you have been giving to strangers out there in the world. How's that, you know, what was that process like, and how is that coming together now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Kara, 5 months after she was diagnosed, she started a blog. She wanted to share her adventures, and unlike, like, she didn't care about search engine. This isn't a criticism of any other approach, but she didn't care about search engine optimization. She didn't care about. She was a pantser as far as how she wrote, and she didn't condense ideas to make them sort of like memeable. What she went, or sound bites. What
Right.
she went for is how the big swirl of everything. And so what you got was she could write body horror better than any horror writer I know. And I know because I write
You're a
horror.
horror writer.
I've been in an anthology of
Yeah.
year's best hardcore horror, and no one can write horror, body horror, like she could, describing things in her own body, but with humor and incredibly descriptive detail, but not just body horror. It's just her whole experience standing up for herself in the medical system and just weathering pain and weathering and just self-doubt and everything, all a big swirl and lots. And so she shared that. And I told her one thing I learned from a writers convention and a panel I sat in on about promotion is put your content out at the same time, and then people will start to expect it. So she decided Tuesdays and Fridays, I'm going to put it out. So every Monday and every Thursday night, she would put it out. And sure enough, even last summer when she stopped, she was no longer able to post, and I'd be spending the night with her, and I'd hear the ding on her tablet of people checking in at all hours to see, and not just because they found out she was really, really ill at that point. It's been throughout. And even now, people will keep checking in to see, what does Kara have to, well, not so much now, what does Charles have to say, but what does Kara have to say about, and oh my God, how is she able to do this after her surgery? I would watch her, she'd be writing and dropping her phone on her head.
Yeah.
One, I don't know how you can do a blog post on a tiny iPhone 7,
Right.
but two, she would like drop it on her head 3 or 4 times and still finish those posts because she looked at it as her duty to show people that stage 4 cancer isn't just some scary, depressing terminal thing, and how you can don't abandon plans for a fun and creative life just because some people told you that you don't have long.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that was beautiful was you took it over at some point, and you were posting, to the blog and to Facebook, and as because you're a writer I know and admire, I was reading all those, so that's kind of where I jumped in. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, and that those were, like you said, I mean, incredibly raw. This is what we're dealing with today in the hospital and navigating the bureaucracy of the American medical system. And it's infuriating, and that's there on the page. And that was like, that was a connection for me, and I'm sure for lots of other people who are saying, yes, I have dealt with this system that does not treat people as humans often, and so, reading through those, and you have plans to put it together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is so cool. I think it really will be a wonderful service to people out there who are saying, I am navigating this as well in this other way, but you can feel on the page how the absolute roller coaster of emotion. Like, we get to be together in this, and also this is incredibly painful today. And so I really appreciated your posts as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And thanks for following. It's for anybody really going through a hard time.
Yeah.
The thing that, like, because we all want to think about, especially after the pandemic, everyone's really afraid of, like, oh, I have a headache. Maybe I should go to urgent care. And I get that, right? And we've been told really, like, super cautious, super prevention and all of that, but all of us are going to die.
Yeah.
And there's this, and sooner or later, whether it's an illness or just your a relationship falls apart, your job falls apart, something in your life just feels like it all fell apart. Maybe you're just struggling and you don't even know why. That's what this is. Why she shared this is because she saw her superpowers. She had a lot of insecurities for as larger than life as she could project herself. But her strengths was what she called charm and effervescence. She
Right.
had this ability to enter a room. It's a cliche to say it lights up a room, but she really, people, she she was the medicine.
Yeah.
Like she could really just change how someone felt in walking out of the room. And months, I mean, months and years later, things like one interaction is all it takes. Um, the number of people who've gotten involved, and I hope, well, maybe I think she'll be fine with it. Like Jenny Comp, who did the technical directing, she took Kara to chemo before the pandemic. She'd never even met her,
Wow.
and she'd barely met me.
Yeah.
There's just something of Kara called herself a connector,
Yeah.
and she could do that because she did have this charm and effervescence, and it wasn't born of some sort of Pollyanna worldview. She came from a lot of, actually, it's the opposite. She came from a lot of familiar intergenerational horror, abuse, rape, molestation, just passed on through the family. And even though she wasn't harmed in the way to the extremes that a lot of the others were, she was a sponge
Yeah.
and an empath, and everyone in that family kind of sensed it, and they would shield her as much as possible. But her superpower, and I'm getting woo woo here, also left her kind of open to absorbing
Yeah.
a lot of awfulness, and she wanted to turn that around. And so that's what her whole philosophy of healing and effervescing is all from coming out of the muck
Yeah.
and the
Well,
vileness.
and I'll bet there's a direct connection there. I think people, the reason she was able to light up the room is somebody was able to look at her and right away say, she cares. She is empathetic. She gets what I'm feeling, and therefore, because she's here, I feel better. Right.
Yeah.
Like there, I mean, I think that kind of empathy comes through. People can read it really fast. And then, a sponge walked into the room and felt what I was feeling in just the moment I needed to be seen. And that, you're right.
Yes.
Years later, somebody goes, you were there for me when you didn't even know that I needed it. But it was because she didn't even have to try. She didn't have to turn it on. That's who she was when she walked into the door. So,
Yeah. And she had a way of over and over again through these interviews. I mean, I already knew this, but people were saying, I either went back to something I loved because of her, and maybe life got in the way. I just got distracted. I was scared or whatever, or I tried something new that I've been scared to do. and she was one that she had that. It really is a rare gift to be able to do that without just coming off like push outside your comfort zone and all the kind of that condensed kind of stuff that gets put out in articles. She had a way of just kind of seeing. She had a freakishly that intuition of like seeing like straight into you, and then finding that way to plant that seed so that you go, oh, I want to go out in the world and I am going to try this. And the stuff I've seen her do, that's crazy. If she can do that, I can do something in my own life.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking, I mean, for you as a creator yourself, over the last few years, you've got the three books. You went to, was it in England where you did the filmmaking? And then,
Rome twice.
yeah, Rome. I mean, so how much of that was, having a partner who was saying, do the thing, like go and make the film. That's a really cool, way that you had somebody who was encouraging you to do the things that you have done over the last couple of years.
Yeah, talk about even that connection I'm talking about. That's just happening like here right now because that's exactly you bringing that up. Um, Go back to the summer of 2019. Kara had just been diagnosed, and me and my childhood friend, um, every summer we would go to this campground, and this time we were in shock because she'd been diagnosed, and he's known her forever, like 34 years. Um, and so we were like, well, we can just be depressed and shocked on our campground trip, or we can do something interesting. And he had brought this, like I said, we're both Gen Xers, $6 million man, also Evil Knievel fans, and he's a motorcycle guy. And so he brought this replica of Evil Knievel stunt cycle, and he wanted to do some jumps with it. So we're just like middle-aged men doing these jumps.
Right.
But for some reason, he was like, he wanted to get some video of a jump. And he got very persnickety about the angles and everything. I'm like, okay, whatever, let's just do it. And so we shot this jump. And then I had this idea, well, do you play? He brought this instrument called, oh, it's escaping me, but it is a stick dulcimer. And it's a way that you can, have you heard of that?
Yeah. It's not a hammer dulcimer, but it's related. Right?
It's like a guitar, but it's easier. Like if you just strum it, it will make notes.
Yeah.
So it can give some gratification to people who aren't in a position to put in the time, that they can at least put together some tunes, and then maybe that'll encourage them to come back and do more. And that's had that effect with him. And so I asked him, what do you play on the stick dulcimer? He was like, well, I can play Norwegian Wood or You Are My Sunshine.
Yeah.
And so I was like, let's try Norwegian Wood. So I asked him to play it. I recorded it on my phone. And then we played the footage from the jump on his phone, and I synced up his recording on my phone, and it was hilarious. And we thought we could make this sort of a pseudo existential art house film here and put in a bunch of abstract imagery, and it grew from there. So we started coming up with like different, like a headshot of him and like, hey, why don't you put in some bird sound effects? And then I came up with the title, The Unbearable Lightness of Crashing. And whenever he cracks up when I propose a title, I know we've hit it. And so we thought, well, we'll throw it on YouTube, send the link to some friends, good to go. But instead, thinking bigger, indirectly influenced, because Kara, he was like, I'm going to submit this to one of the biggest motorcycle film festivals in the world. And it got accepted and screened at the Hollywood Theater.
Oh my God.
At the beginning of 2020. So to give you some perspective on this, the Hollywood Theater once turned me down. I pitched screening Critters, the first Critters movie, because some people listening might know that Brian Muir, my first cousin on my dad's side, he's the creator of Critters.
Oh,
and he
really?
wrote
I
the
did not know
first.
that.
Yeah, before Goonies, before Gremlins, he wrote this in high school, but it came out like after.
Yeah.
But anyway, Brian had died, and I had pitched Screen Critters at the Hollywood Theater. Kara's already promoting shows. I guarantee you we will fill that house.
Yeah.
But he turned it down. It's his business, right? It's his business. So I couldn't get Brian Muir's Critters cult classic to screen. But now I am in a packed room with like standing room only with actual filmmakers. Kara took a lift. She had just had surgery, so she was like lying sideways in the seats.
Oh my gosh.
And they call me and James, my friend, up, with actual legitimate filmmakers. We stand on stage under the glaring lights and to a roaring applause
For this bizarre
to a
movie.
35-second movie that we just shot with like an iPhone 7.
Oh, that is awesome. And so is that what then inspired you to go, we're going to do this other one in Rome? Like,
Yeah, so that one, so then he submitted the same one. It got accepted by the Black Hills, South Dakota Film Festival too, but he submitted it to a motorcycle film festival in Rome, Italy, and then it got accepted there, and then COVID delayed the screening, but finally we went there, and while we were there, we went across the world for 35 seconds to watch this
right,
movie. But I've gone across even further across the world for 60 seconds to try and get into an air guitar contest.
right.
To me, this is not over the top. So anyway, we go to Rome, and I'm a big fan of Roman Holiday.
Yeah.
Gregory Peck and Audrey Hepburn, and the scenery, just the scenery itself is so incredible. And I just wanted to kind of imitate a shot of me walking, like Gregory Peck, where the camera follows him, and you get some of this amazing, the ruins.
Yeah.
And so, well, we were in front of the Coliseum, and James shot this thing. And as he was getting ready to shoot me, I was like, because of air guitar, I was like, I should probably have I should emote somehow, not just have me walk, but I should emote. So I couldn't come up with anything else but to kind of run my hand through my lack of hair and act worried. And so we took some shots of me just walking around Italy looking worried. And he's like, well, and we were only there for like 4 nights. It was a very short trip. That includes the flight. Very short trip. So we didn't have much time at all for any of this. But as we're going out on the last day to just actually finally see some sights, because where the venue was, where the festival was like almost an hour away from where we were staying. Or I mean, we were staying an hour outside of Rome, so it took time.
Yeah.
So finally we go in the last night, and I got some, and he told me, if you're going to do more we call it worry walks, you should wear the same outfit. And I just happened to have been wearing my black Kara Picante logo t-shirt and some dark jeans. That's what I happened to be wearing. So I wore them out this last night. My friend, I asked him to pull up an app. It was a walking tour of all the destinations in Roman Holiday.
Nice.
And so he just shot me all over the place in front of the news building where Gregory Peck goes into, and the Spanish Steps, and Trevi Fountain. And I'm walking through the crowd just looking worried. And then we get on the plane the next morning, and my friend falls asleep next to me. And I was like, I want to write something to go with all this footage and maybe throw it into something. But how do I deal with the fact that it's very obviously just a guy walking around the streets of Rome? Well, I came up with this concept, wrote out this it was almost more like a poem. And then when I came home, I reached out to my brother, who's a professional a musician, and I asked him, could you write some music, just some acoustic guitar? Imagine what you would hear in the saddest bar in the world. And then he's like, sure, okay. And he sent me some acoustics. And then Rob, who helped me with the show, I asked him, because he's a voice actor as well as a world air guitar champion. I asked him, can you do the voiceover for this? And he was like, he sort of sent it over, and he was like, wow, this is really potent. Let me take a few days to kind of work up something. Well, they both send me their tracks, and I start editing with the footage and my concept, and it almost did it itself. It was just like, it took less than a day, and I was like, oh my God, this is solid, man. And I put it on YouTube and just had Kara watch, and she started crying. It was like a powerful experience. And everyone I showed it to was like, wow, this is really powerful, Charles. And so I ended up submitting that to the Oregon Short Film Festival, because James had been inspired by Kara to to send the other film. They accepted that film. So then 4 months later, Kara and Rob and we go to the Oregon Short Film Festival in the Dalles, Oregon. The film wins Best Experimental Microfilm. And then they play it in a drive-in theater outside this winery. And I'm watching myself walk across the screen, walking across the screen on the side of a building 4 months later.
Yeah.
Like that is how she brought people together and could inspire us. Yeah.
That is so cool. Yeah. And it just comes together. That's That's amazing. Okay, so I want to we've got to go to our ad break, but when we come back, I want to ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately. Special announcement time. NotAPipePublishing has always been committed to helping authors and readers find one another. Well, this show, which is all about helping readers get to know writers, just hit a milestone: 10,000 views on YouTube. So to celebrate, instead of charging authors to advertise their books on the show, I'm going to run your ads for free throughout 2024. If you want to make a 30 to 60-second video about your book, let folks know what it's about and where to find it, and don't forget your name and the title. I'll run one or two of those in our ad spot each week. Just send an MP4 file to the NotAPipe email address in the show notes. Let's fix up some readers and authors into reader relationships. 2024. More readers, more writers, more books.
Hello, my name is Fred Gambino. I've worked in the story industry for 4 decades as a film and game concept artist and a book cover artist. My love of story has led me to write my debut novel, Dark Shepherd, to be published by Newcom Press in May 2024. A fast-paced science fiction action thriller, it opens on the beach, where starships are crashed from orbit in order to break them up. Breela's in charge of several giant dismantling machines, and her job is to further take apart the shattered ships. Semi-freelance, she is one of many teams who work the beach, making money on the load she collects and sends to central processing. But the beach is a difficult place. Subject to misogyny and racism, she is unjustly fired, setting off a sequence of events that leads to her fleeing across the galaxy in the company of a ragtag group of misfits, pursued by agents of the ruthless and politically powerful Church of Second Light for a secret she didn't know she possessed. Only Brill can locate a mysterious rip, a wormhole that will leave humanity vulnerable to an ancient enemy, and only she stands a chance of closing it. Available for pre-order now at www.newcompress.co.uk.
An Accidental Hero, a mostly true wombat story by Laura Rediger and Debbie Palin, is based on events during the aftermath of the Australian bushfires in 2020. Rescuers discovered animals sheltering in wombat burrows. Wombats were praised for providing a safe refuge underground. While they didn't invite other wildlife into their homes, they did truly become accidental heroes. The book is written as a newscast, with Koala and Emu at the news desk. Field reporter Kangaroo introduces readers to Wombat and her new friends. An Accidental Hero, a mostly true wombat story by Laura Rediger and Debbie Palin. A STEM picture book published by iFrig Publishing, available at ifrigpublishing.com or wherever books are sold. For more about the author, go to lauraredigerbooks.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Charles, before we talk about daydreaming, I can't forget to ask, can people find these movies we've been talking about, the films you've made, are those all available on YouTube? Is that stuff all out there?
Yeah, they're all on my YouTube channel. If you just Google Charles Austin Muir and Charles Austin Muir. So there's a Charles Muir. The most results you'll get if you search Charles Muir, you'll find a tantric sex guru.
I mean, no judgment.
No judgment there. I'm kind of envious because he apparently teaches tantric sex classes in Maui, and I'm like, where did I go wrong?
I mean, when you think about it, you've got Charles Austin Muir, so it's like tantric sex, but it lasts even longer. I mean, that's not bad at all. So
2.0.
Yes, I've added to the tantric sex Charles Austin Muir. Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, it's Charles Austin Muir, and then my YouTube channel has it has A History of Worry is the award-winning film, and then it has other, like me and Kara would do these tutorials. Like there's one on how to do wound care, and it's full of humor. It's called The Angry Butt Stuffer, but it's also really based in like being an angry, grumpy caregiver. But there's a lot of humor in it, and we just wanted to help people to just see things in a different way. It's and other weird entertainment videos, air guitar videos, and an interview where how has she gotten through the journey so far.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll definitely link to those in the show notes so folks can check those out. But before folks jump away to those, because I know, I at this point, full confession, if I were listening to the show right now, would be clicking over to those videos. Don't click away quite yet. So I wanted to ask you, Charles, what have you been daydreaming about lately?
Well, I've been thinking about this movie I just watched the other week at Movie Madness at a friend's birthday screening. Lenny, I don't know if you met him. He's the one who shot some of the photos, but
Yeah.
he screened, he rented the room in the theater and watched To Live and Die in LA with William Peterson and Willem Dafoe, and directed by a lot of William Friedkin. I hadn't seen it since it came out in the theater in like 86. So I
Yeah.
didn't remember anything about it.
I think I have seen it, and same thing. I don't remember it, so I should go
But
back and check that one out too.
it is wild. It's deliberately shot rough. Like most things were shot in one take, and there's weird stuff like a character says goodbye to someone else and then gets into their truck, but they get in on the passenger side, and then you're like, well, are they showing how athletic he is that he's going to hop over the? No, it's just he got on the wrong side of the, and William Friedkin just left it in there. Like he would just let the camera run and catch awkward actors trying to figure out what to do, and it all really works. And it's so nice to not watch everything be buttery smooth and kind of lit the kind of the way that everything is these days. But the main the world of this story, I'll show you, give you an idea from the opening. William Peterson is a Secret Service agent, and he's in the presidential suite, and he steps out and he sees a hotel staff, someone in the hotel staff delivering food. The guy's holding a tray with a dish on it, walks around the corner. So William Peterson follows him and then sees the guy has disappeared and the tray is on the floor outside a room. So then he lifts up the cover on the dish and there's just an empty plate. And I would say the entire movie, William Friedkin just shows you what the entire movie is going to be in that one gesture, because nothing is as it seems. And it's not even like there's a real and a false. It's all a dream. Everything is a dream. And it's all about it's about a counterfeit. Willem Dafoe is a counterfeit money guy. And William Peterson's going after him. But the thing about counterfeit, what you run into is like, oh, that's right, money isn't real either.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of agreements between a lot of thinking, beings for centuries, right? It's an agreement. So then but you're talking about real money and fake money, and then it breaks down. It's just agreements. And then at one point he runs into a problem in his pursuit of the bad guy because one guy won't sign a sheet of paper. The legal system, that whole thing. But it's like that guy, other people sign papers so that he can sign another paper. And that's all that's holding William Peterson back from getting this guy who's trafficking off of more paper. None of it is real.
Right.
And no one is who they seem to be. The main character is arguably not even the main character.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about that a lot, because the only thing in that movie that is real are the choices that people make within the consensual reality of all these agreements that we then forget as just a consensus. We all have these agreements.
And then all of this is layered under, this is all a conceit and it's a film. So it's
yes,
real, fake, real, fake, real. Like that's really cool.
Now you say that, I think that's partly why he didn't try to hide some of those flaws.
Yeah.
Is because exactly, because it's layered on top of this is just a story,
a counterfeit depiction of a reality, and within that, that's really cool.
It's trying to get people to think, and it's trying to get people to think that there really isn't anything real except the choices we make. And so that's why that's really what I've been thinking about, is the choices we make, because we can either make choices that help people find a better path through all these agreements and all the chaos, or we can just keep causing damage.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the movie, the decisions usually go down the other road.
Right.
But it's made me think about, because I kind of feel like life too isn't so much different from the movie. I mean, we've all probably said at one point that kind of felt like a dream, or I feel like this feels dreamlike, or this feels like a fever dream. You know what I mean? And so
Oh
I've been
yeah,
kind of thinking more and more, because speaking of daydreaming,
yeah.
is literally just daydream, just dreaming all the time with these agreements. And
Yes.
what kind of choices do we make at
Or not
every
make. I mean,
second?
I'm working on a short story right now for, there's a deadline for Uncanny Magazine, and I want to get my short story done.
Oh
I've
yeah.
been working on this short story that is about kind of adulting and the way that we just passively, we stop making those conscious choices and go, oh, this is just what I have to do. And those can cause an incredible amount of harm. Like,
Yeah.
why did this person do this? Because they didn't even think about, I am making choices. And you're right, my choices become me. That is who I am. I'm the choices that I make. But if I just go, the next day I do what I always do because this is my job and this is the rut that I have fallen into, we can end up doing a lot of damage by just it's just adulting. Well, are these the choices you wanted to make? Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that I'm playing with that and also trying to keep it under 1,000 words. It's a flash piece.
Oh,
That's tough. That's tough. I'm
that is.
struggling with that. We'll see if I can pull it off.
But it
Um,
sounds like somewhere that, regardless, like you could submit it to a ton of places.
Yeah, I may need to go. Okay, there's the 1,000 word version that goes off to Uncanny, and if they don't pick it up, maybe it's because I couldn't get it under 1,000, and here's the 3,000 word version that's really better, and
Yeah, right,
lots of
right.
places. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Keep those folks who are writers out there. I know this isn't a show about process, but keep all your drafts. Please keep all your drafts. Never lose a draft because maybe the draft 2 was better than draft 4. You never want to lose it. You can always go
Yeah,
back to
right.
there's nearly infinite space in the cloud. Save all your drafts.
Yes.
Um, so one of the things I always ask folks about is what would be like a poll that I could toss out there to the world that would be your question for the universe. So what would be your idea for our weekly poll?
All right. Well, um, okay, here it is. Rogue One, better than Empire or no?
Yeah, that's going to be a hot debate for Star Wars fans. My what I found is for Star Wars, people who are not Star Wars fans are going to think this is the dorkiest kind of insight ever, but it's very generational. Like it's where you were in your life. And so, people who are a little bit, my son is a giant Star Wars fan too, and people who are a little bit older than he is, for them it's like Phantom Menace is their high point of Star Wars, which boggles my mind.
Oh,
Like you can't, but it's because they were 8. It caught
yeah,
them at the
yeah,
right place. And so we try and kind of step back objectively and debate this and go, okay, but what's really the best one? And yeah,
right.
Rogue and Empire, because I was just at the right age for Jedi, and I'm able to go, okay, I can acknowledge Jedi with the Ewoks and the impulse to make it a little cutesier is not the best of them, but it's always going to have a special kind of warm place in my heart.
Sure.
Rogue One is really high quality film, and an Empire is incredible. And then we go back and forth in my house about whether or not the best Star Wars ever is Andor. Have you watched that show
Oh,
yet?
I haven't watched that.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's so if you like Rogue One, Andor is like Rogue One quality series.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's this very slow build. Like the first episode is, they had to release the first 2 episodes in the same night because I think if they'd released the first one, people would have said this is terrible. It moves so slowly, and then it
Huh.
builds and builds, and by the end of the second episode, so by the end of the first night, it's totally hooked. 2 hours in, and then it just gets better. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, you will love Andor. So yes, folks, weigh in on the Rogue One versus Empire when I toss that up there. And some people are going to go, it's Andor.
Yeah.
It's so good. Um, so what is in your to read pile? What are you looking forward to getting around to?
Well, so a couple of things. I've been wanting to read more J.G. Ballard. I've got a bunch of his sci-fi novels. But also for years I've been meaning to read Death on the Installment Plan by Ferdinand Celine, I think is how you
I
say
know
his
nothing
name.
about this. So what's it about?
So it's a prequel, I guess, to another book that I read called Journey to the End of the Night. And it's dark and nasty, it's episodic, just this guy who's a doctor who works in like impoverished, super disease ridden places, and you'd think, well, that makes him altruistic and what a great guy, but he also is a horrible guy. But the way it's written is it's mind bending and incredible.
Mm.
And Saline, I guess, is anti-Semitic and awful himself,
Oh,
but that book is so. And so I've been meaning to read Death on the Installment Plan because some of his other stuff to me is unreadable. It's so historically specific and
yeah.
literally just dot 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 kind of phrases. So I can't get through this, but
Yeah.
that's his second novel, and it's kind of more like I think it's a second novel, more like the first, more like Journey to the End of the Night.
Yeah, back when he was still going, I do want the reader to be able to, interpret this in some way and not, screw you, reader.
Yeah,
I think
here's
some
all the
writers get to
footnotes.
that point.
Yeah,
Yeah, where they're just like, I don't care about the reader anymore. And I'm very much a reader focused writer. Like if the reader's not getting anything out of this, then I'm wasting my time. But I do recognize that place that writers can get to where they're saying, I have developed this style and I have enough people who appreciate this style. I'm writing for this much smaller niche now, later in my career. Whereas I'm like, no, I want people to be able to make sense of this.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I will check that one out. Death on the Installment Plan. Yeah, it is tough when you come across some of those, these ideas that people had, and you're, going, okay, I can acknowledge that this anti-Semitism was of this person. It was tolerable in this person's social milieu at the time, but I have to like push past that, and that's a real struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also something about kind of being the grown up who says I don't have to love all this. I can
Right.
recognize what's good about it, and I can recognize what's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one I'll check out. So I've been asking this question recently of authors. Part of our challenge in this profession is we've simultaneously got to create all this content, and then we've got to reach out to the world beyond us. And in the algorithmic awfulness of social media, everything's got to be grabby, right? It's got to get the maximum amount of attention, and I think that pushes people to say things they don't even believe in some cases to get just horrible attention out there. I'll come across things and I'll think this person can't possibly actually believe this. So either to satirize that or maybe to engage in it, what is your hottest take, your opinion that is going to be so controversial that when we toss this out at the outrage machine, people are just going to be like, I guess I have to read Charles Austin Muir now because he said this thing.
Yeah, so like if I have my own radio show, I'm like that shock jock.
Yes, this is your shock moment.
Yeah, just get everyone all up in arms, and yeah. So I'm going to give a fitness hot take because fitness is a pretty mainstream thing these days.
Oh yeah.
Squatting, I'm just going to read what I've got, okay? Squatting ass to grass all the time is like taking a 3-point shot a foot outside the 3-point line. There is no point unless you are training for a competition that requires you to lower your butt near your heels.
Ah.
Boom.
Boom. Yes, we have dropped the mic, people out there. So
I wrote that.
no, people, need to hear this.
Come at me.
Your fitness, yeah, exactly. Knows his stuff, personal trainer, and is telling you don't need to get your ass that low unless that's your. And what jobs would require it? Like, who is in a profession? I mean, maybe there are certain sports, but like what, in your day-to-day life, when do you need to be sitting an inch off the ground?
Yeah, because we're in a society where we can't do that, right? It's really hard. So generally, if you want to, like, let's say you're a UPS loading person, you're not going to want to squat that low. Because you have way more range of motion, you're going to be in a way more awkward position, and your knees are going to be in the way of the thing you need to pick up. So you do not want to go down low.
Yeah. So don't squat an inch off the ground. It's not okay. Good. We're going to put that out there, and somebody's going to be like, "Ah!" And then
yeah, exactly.
Freak out.
All the ass to grass squat religion people.
Yes, they're going to be like, no, it's so great for your knees and your lower. And like, no, that your knees don't need to do that every day.
Well, and like I bring that up because we're a society that sits and have so much back pain. And even honestly, compared to like 40 years ago when I was learning how to lift, like in high school, I watch young people, but people of all ages are having spinal issues that I never saw before. There's such tight hamstrings
Yeah.
that people just can't do it without their backs moving around in weird ways. And so that's another good reason to not go that low
Yeah, I had to
and
go into
load
the
it.
doctor. I had some knee pain, and I was like, "This is weird. I don't do any kind of physical activity of any kind. Why am I having this knee pain?" And he said, "My hamstrings are so tight," which, I'm not an athlete. Like, why are they so? And you're absolutely right. I sit all the time.
Well, we're writing.
Yeah, I'm writing and tense, and
Yeah.
that's enough. That it was actually hurting. It was like, he's pretty convinced that I tore a meniscus sitting.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, but and then he said to me, "It'll heal," and I was like, "No, no, no! If it's a torn meniscus, I need surgery. I need da da da." And then I had to very reluctantly go into my doctor afterwards and say, "Yeah, the guy that I got on a random Tuesday who wasn't my regular doctor, he was right. It healed up. It's fine."
There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, the medical professionals, bedside manner wasn't great. I very much felt like he was tossing me out the door, but he was right. It did heal on its own in 6 weeks.
Uh, there you
Um,
go.
so
So, yep.
so where can listeners find you when you aren't, writing your books, but when you're online? Where's your online presence?
Yeah, other than YouTube, I Charles Austin Muir, Facebook, Instagram, and then my wife, her blog, The Adventures of Kara Picante, that has the blog and some other pages on it. And so I've been keeping that up. And I try to be, I'm not as consistent as she was, but I put something out every week, including content like photos, videos from the show, and just trying to figure out where I want to go with that, because there's a lot of it's a great resource for just dealing with and it's not segmented. She did not segment things, so it's for this population or for this or
Yeah.
this market. It's just the big swirl and all the mystery and all the humor, and so that's what I've been um, giving people a payoff every time you click on there. There should be some sort of payoff.
Yeah. Well, and
So the Adventures of Kara Picante.
yeah, and it's a community now. Like, and that's another thing. She didn't say to herself, "How am I gonna, maximize clicks?" Like she was, just I'm gonna put myself out there, and between the two of you, you've created this community of readers who are gonna
Yeah.
want to come back to that. So yes, The Adventures of Kara Picante, check it out, folks. You will get a lot out of that. So who's somebody that you think I should have on this show?
Jenny Comp. So she not only I don't you're similar and you guys have these crazy like all over the place abilities to I don't know how you do all these things. I know you've heard this
The
before
guy
because
who
I
writes
heard
horror novels and makes films, and
well, but I mean like just 68 episodes of podcast alone is like that's a big thing.
It,
Um
yeah,
But anyway, yeah, Jenny Comp. So she's not only did she have this like super sophisticated like theater production experience and all these other things I didn't know she could do either, but she runs a publishing company.
yeah,
So she put out this anthology called The Phone, which is about this phone that can just mysteriously pop up in someone's life. It's inspired by a cultural phenomenon in Japan
yeah. It was
where
an
this guy.
artist installation in
Yeah,
Japan.
you could explain it better than
Yeah,
I
so
could.
there was this art installation in Japan where this artist set up a phone booth that people could where the phone is not connected to anything. And it was just for people to come and kind of have the experience of communicating with whomever they needed to communicate with. And so Jenny was inspired by this, put out an all call. Charles and I are both in there. We've got stories in there about people reaching out to someone, in the kind of great beyond. Only her conceit was, what if this phone were just appearing in different places? And so all these different authors experimented with, the phone shows up and who does my character talk to? And that's a fun anthology. It's really varied. Some of the stories are
Yeah.
tragic and some of the stories are hilarious. And so, yeah, worth checking out. Yeah, I'll absolutely reach out to Jenny. She would be really fun to have on.
Oh
So,
yeah.
Before we get to our final advice for the week, some folks I need to thank. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, his song I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3Ds. And thanks to Halizna CCO for their song Kids for the ad break. If you're in a band and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's song, so email that to me. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making this show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipePublishing. So please go to NotAPipePublishing.com. Check out the amazing book written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much.
Yeah.
If you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it. Check out Charles. Which of your books? I mean, people should check them all out. I'm trying to think. My favorite is probably Slippery When Metastasized. Is that the one that you are directing folks to at this point?
Yeah, that was my most recent one. That was it was inspired by when Kara was diagnosed with cancer, and so
But it's a trip. Like it is. Yeah, that one's wild. So yeah, folks, check that one out. Tell a friend about it, and click that 5th star. Give Charles a review. Make his day. And same for this show. Click on the little thumbs up there in front of you an odd number of times, and give us a review. And if you do, and if it's something fun, maybe we'll read it on the show. We've done that a few times. So Charles and I want you to remember some things this week. So Charles,
I came up with yeah.
You did come up with another one?
I came up with a better one.
Well, we might want to tell everyone what your other one was.
Okay.
What is your advice for everybody for the week?
Show your sparkle.
Yes, that is good. What were you thinking, though? I think it's worth sharing too.
Watch your cornhole.
I think both of those are excellent pieces of advice. Show your sparkle, watch your cornhole. Excellent. I don't even know how I would follow that, so I'll only say, Charles and I, no matter how much you procrastinate, we're still proud of you.
If I take my time.